Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to close the public hearing. No more comments. And open it up to discussion amongst the commissioners. So, the public hearing is closed. Commissioners? Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Bill.
Thank you. First of all, I apologize for being an hour late. If I do that in court, I get tongue lashed by the judges and often threatened with jail time, so I really apologize. It couldn't be helped, and just so you know, there's still traffic on the 5. It hasn't changed. I am sorry that I missed the presentation on the code section, because as an attorney, that was very interesting to me. And I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions, almost yes or no, just to not put you out anymore there. But according to the code section, the proposed housing development has to comply with applicable objective, general plan, and zoning standards and criteria. And according to your report, it complies with those, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the way I read it, when the project meets those criteria, it requires approval. But if a local agency disapproves, they have to base that decision on substantial evidence. And they define that substantial evidence as having a specific adverse impact, which in turn also means significant, quantifiable, direct, unavoidable. And those terms actually have to be based on objective, identifiable, written, several items, including policies. So my reading of this is as an attorney. I hear the pleas, I hear the appeal from the developer on one side to build this business, and which will become apartments, from the citizens, from the city, from the businesses. And I appreciate the work that the city's done to actually go through in detail and lay out their terms. And the city's done their best to actually meet the criteria that are within the general plan, within the codes, within the guidelines, the number of units, the number of parking spaces. And the most the city can do often is say, here's the number that's on paper. Does the number the developer's proposing match that? And we as commissioners have to look at that information and decide, does it fit? The city's telling us it's under 40, it requires under 40, therefore we should approve it. Now, on the flip side of that, I think that the citizens of Vista and the attorney that they hired raised some really good points. And so I just want to make sure that the letter from Delano is on the record, is being put into the record, as is the list of the Lucy policies. So if I were to make a decision on this and I had to lay out what the specific adverse impact would be and base that on significant, quantifiable, direct, and unavoidable, and within those 4 categories, objective, identified, written policies, I would submit these as the basis for my decision. And so with that, I would suggest to the other commissioners, I intend to vote against this in some way based on those specific criteria. And I want to make sure that the citizens know this is not an emotional decision. Unfortunately, we get to hear the hard times. We get to hear that you have cars parked in front of your houses and that things aren't working out well. We can't make a decision based just on those issues. But when you actually have specific lines from the code and from the general plan, this gives us some flexibility and some basis to actually make that call. So thank you for this. And to the developer, this is not... I know how much work you put into this, months and years and revisions and time. So please don't take this in any way as a negative attack on your plan or your project. This is my reading of the code, my reading of the facts here, and this is the basis for my decision. And so I'm open to hearing other suggestions and other interpretations of that, but that's my take at this point.
Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. You've said a lot that I absolutely agree with. Mr. Looney, I agree with you that there have been a lot of changes made, possibly for the better with this project since it started. It's still too much there. And I don't know if we can deny it or if I can suggest that we require a full EIR that takes into, for exactly the things that Mr. Picarato was saying, the traffic, the the parking. Did we do a traffic study that encompassed all the rest of the neighborhoods that were being impacted? Have we really looked at the parking that is impacting other neighborhoods? Does it truly, looking at the Lucy guidelines, does it truly meet the general plan? I'd really like to ask if we could require a full EIR or deny it.
Okay. Commissioner Garrison.
Are we going to get an answer to that, or is that a?
The question of whether
Stephanie just asked a question about whether we can require a full EIR. Can we get an answer to that?
Well, I'll answer the question on the denial. The evidence and the information is before the commission. So if the commission concludes that it's compliant with the objective standards, but that it exceeds an adverse, produces a specific adverse impact based upon evidence before the commission, and that cannot be mitigated, the commission certainly would have the authority to deny on that basis. And ultimately, if it were reviewed and there was substantial evidence to support the commission, it ought to be upheld.
Thank you. I have a few other questions. This proposal calls for, this is for the developer, access gate to the park. It says proposed. Has that been approved, or what would have to be done to approve that access through the fence to the park?
The school district was consulted, and they've approved the concept of putting a gate in as long as it has a magnetic lock that will open during the regular park hours.
But doesn't that go to the city park and not to the school lot?
It goes to the city park, but the school district has rights over use of the park as well through an agreement that they currently have with the city.
But you can get into that park from Melrose
Yes.
24/7, 365.
The agreement from the district was only to allow access through the gate during the non-school hours. So that's what the condition that's in the packet states.
What about parking on those spots that are facing the baseball field? I would guess that the headlights from the cars could interfere with the parking. Will there be some way to block the headlights from the ball fields?
So there is landscaping around the perimeter of the project, but the commission has the ability to condition additional landscaping to ensure that the lights are blocked.
That will be one of the things that I will definitely propose. The other thing is, or one of the other things, there was a proposal to put, if construction begins, to put walls on the north and south side, but not the west and the east side. And the same noise is going to happen whether it's east or west or north or south. Why is there not a noise wall on the east side?
The requirement for the noise wall was to mitigate the sensitive land uses adjacent to the project, which are residential to the north and a park to the south. Because there's commercial retail to the east, we didn't feel that there was a need for noise mitigation during construction.
Why? All those people visiting the bank and the CVS are going to hear that noise. And it's going to get, according to the report there, up to 85, 90 dB. Which could be harmful to people.
The intent was to mitigate places where people would be outside using the exterior of their property. So in a residential configuration or at the park, people would normally be outside. In a commercial district, most of the outside use is limited to parking your car and walking into the building.
And it doesn't take a lot of noise, or doesn't take a long time hearing that kind of decibel level to harm somebody's hearing that's visiting the bank or the or the
So-
CVS. So
On that point, the staff recommendation was to only mitigate those sensitive areas, but the commission again could impose additional conditions to address that point, certainly.
all right, thank you.
Commissioner Looney.
And this is for staff. In public comment, it was brought up that variances were being requested for this project. Could you specify what is beyond the normal allowable guidelines?
Yes, there is one condition in our code that requires minimum unit sizes be maintained for the size of the residential units proposed, and they provide numeric criteria for the size of each unit as a minimum unit size. Within this project, there are 4 of the 88 proposed units that don't meet the minimum unit size for a one-bedroom, which is 700 square feet. I think the minimum in this project is 625 for those 4 units. So the commission would have to accept that deviation or require the applicant to redesign the project to meet the minimum unit size.
And what's the building setback from Breeze Hill?
That's proposed?
Yes. No. Currently, from the application, it looks like it's 13 feet.
The minimum is 13, correct.
Okay. Thank you.